The brass reception bell jumps when Wade drops it in the middle of the conference table. My new nameplate lands beside it. Mara Ellis, reception. At Monday's staff meeting, in front of 14 people who have brought me contracts, cost reports, and problems for 6 years, my brother-in-law strips away my analyst title. "Your reception now," he says. "Smile and answer phones." My sister, Celia, keeps her eyes on her legal pad. I take the nameplate and the bell without arguing. At 3:17 that afternoon, Calvin Rusk arrives to finalize our largest vendor renewal. He sees one clause in the agreement beside my keyboard, then looks straight past Wade. "Who wrote the contract?" Wade gives a small laugh. "A lot of hands touch these things." Calvin taps the clause with one square fingernail. "This language. Who wrote it?" I look at Celia through the glass wall of payroll. She has finally raised her head. The question in her face isn't whether I'll expose her husband, it's whether I'll protect him again. That morning, Wade had waited until everyone was seated before bringing in the bell. It was an old hotel bell, heavy and dull, with a tarnished base and a dent near the plunger. It had sat on the reception counter since before I joined Mercer Linen Service. Donna, our receptionist, rang it every year when the Thanksgiving turkeys arrived, which made no sense except that it was tradition, and Donna liked making the route drivers line up. Donna had retired Friday. On Monday, Wade carried her bell into the staff meeting like evidence. He set it in front of my coffee. The room smelled faintly of wet cotton and industrial detergent. Even through 2 closed doors, you could feel the wash floor starting its first heavy cycle. The table shivered every time washer 4 went into extraction. A plastic spoon in someone's yogurt cup clicked against the rim. Wade stood at the whiteboard in a blue shirt Celia had bought him for their anniversary. I knew because I had been beside her when she found it. She'd held it against herself and said, "This color makes him look reasonable." It did. "Before we get into route performance," Wade said, "we're making some organizational adjustments." He was good at this part of his job. He could say layoffs without saying layoffs, late without saying late, and broken without identifying the person who had broken it. He had taken Mercer from handwritten route cards to live vehicle tracking in 11 months. He could walk through the soil sort room, spot a jam by sound, and tell which supervisor was pretending not to hear it. He was also about to pretend my demotion had arrived from the weather. "Until we fill Donna's position," he said, "Mara will cover the front desk." A couple of people looked at me, then away. "What happens to contract analysis?" Nina Patel asked. Nina ran accounts payable from a cubicle decorated with 1 healthy pothos and 3 dead succulents she refused to throw away. "Department leads will absorb it." "Which department leads?" she asked. Wade smiled. "The relevant ones." Nina wrote something down. He turned to me. "You'll transfer your active files to the shared drive by noon." "They're already on the shared drive." "Then that should be easy." My old nameplate had been removed from my office before the meeting. Through the glass, I could see the pale rectangle it had left on the wall. Wade slid the replacement toward me. "You'll sit up front." The route manager beside me studied his coffee as if a beetle had drowned in it. I touched the new nameplate with 1 finger. The plastic was still warm from the label printer. "Is this temporary?" I asked. "That depends on how well you support the team." "By answering phones. By doing what the business needs." Washer 4 shifted into high speed. The spoon clicked faster. I could have asked why he had disabled my approval permissions at 7:42 that morning. I could have opened the folder in front of me and read aloud the 3 clauses he had demanded I endorse on Friday. I could have reminded him that calling something a vendor discount did not make it one. Instead, I picked up the bell and the nameplate. Wade leaned 1 hip against the table. He had expected an argument. I could tell by the looseness that came over his face when he didn't get one. Then he added, "And Mara?" I stopped at the door. "Your reception now. Smile and answer phones." A short, embarrassed sound came from somewhere near the coffee urn. It might have been a laugh. It might have been somebody choking. I looked at Celia. She drew a neat square around something on her pad. I smiled at Wade. "Anything else?" His own smile tightened. "That'll do." The reception desk had a crescent worn into the laminate where Donna's bracelets had rubbed for 19 years. She had left a bottle of hand lotion, a jar of peppermints fused into a single mass, and a note taped beneath the phone. Frank D is not Frank B. Do not send either one to the other one's meeting. Below that, in different ink, she had added, "You'll see." I set the bell to the left of the visitor ledger and my nameplate to the right. Then I brought out the Rusk renewal. The proposed contract was 63 pages, including schedules. Wade kept calling it a renewal, as though we were extending the same terms. It was a replacement agreement written after Rusk Textile Supply merged 2 distribution centers and changed its freight model. Rusk supplied most of our white rental stock: restaurant napkins, clinic sheets, bath towels, and the bar mops that arrived in compressed bales smelling faintly of cardboard. Our name was Mercer Linen Service, but we manufactured nothing. We bought textile inventory, rented it to customers, collected it dirty, washed it, repaired it, and sent it out again until the fabric became too thin to survive another tunnel cycle. Small mistakes multiplied. A 4-cent increase on a towel could become 6 figures across its useful life. A minimum volume that looked safe in July could choke us in January when restaurants cut hours and clinics delayed openings. Friday afternoon, Wade had stood in my office doorway and told me to mark the agreement approved. I had shown him Schedule F. He had said, "Calvin already moved on price." I had said he moved it into the fuel table. That's dramatic. It's arithmetic. That had been the wrong answer, although it remained arithmetic. Now I spread the agreement across Donna's desk and used my red China marker to circle the freight adjustment again. The marker was made for writing on slick surfaces. The wash floor supervisors used them to mark cracked chemical drums and rejected bundles. I had started carrying one after a salesperson tried to revise a pricing sheet in pen, then claimed the alteration had been on the original. At 9:40, the phone rang. "Mercer Linen Service. This is Mara." A man said, "Donna." Donna retired. Silence. "Can she do that?" "Apparently." He hung up. At 10:15, a uniformed salesman arrived with 2 rolling racks and insisted Wade had approved a fitting. Wade had not. At 10:40, Frank D arrived for a meeting with our insurance broker. I sent him to Conference B. 7 minutes later, Frank B walked in carrying a box of sample soap dispensers. Donna had been right. At 11, a clinic manager named Renee Alvarez came in holding a clear plastic bag. Inside was a sheet with a blue streak running down its center. "I've called 3 times, she said. I stood. "May I see it?" She placed the bag on the counter. The sheet smelled like clean linen and hot plastic. "That isn't dye transfer," I said. "That's what your service manager told me." "It's iron." She crossed her arms. "You can tell by looking?" "I can tell because dye feathers at the edge. Iron drags." I called Leon Voss, the plant manager. He arrived 2 minutes later with his safety glasses still on top of his head. He looked at the streak, looked at me, then held the bag toward the light. "Was this from the North Clinic?" Renee nodded. Leon's jaw moved. "Cart washer." "That was my guess," I said. He glanced toward Wade's office. The new cart washer had been Wade's project. Leon said, "I'll pull the batch records." Renee's shoulders lowered 1/2 inch. That's all I wanted somebody to say. I wrote her contact information in the ledger because my customer service access had disappeared along with my approval permissions. When she left, Leon stayed at the desk. He was a broad, quiet man who treated every machine like it had a private motive. He tapped the top page of the Russ contract. "You still reviewing that?" "Only recreationally." His mouth twitched. "Wade says the minimums are covered by the new routes. Wade says a lot of things near whiteboards. You think they aren't?" I turned the agreement so he could see Schedule F. What was our highest weekly intake last quarter? About 180,000 clean pounds. Rusk's minimum converts to 206,000 by month 7. Leon took off his glasses. "He has the new accounts in there," he said. "He has every proposed account in there at full estimated volume, starting on its proposed opening date. The Fairmont route got pushed. I know. And Bishop Rehab hasn't signed. I know. He rubbed the dent in the brass bell with his thumb. Does he? He has the same pipeline report I do. Leon put his glasses back on. That wasn't my question. Before I could answer, Wade appeared in the hallway. Leon, I need you on the floor. Cart washers leaving marks. It passed commissioning. The sheets didn't. Wade's eyes moved from the bag to the contract to me. He was quick enough to understand the shape of a conversation from the objects left behind. Handle the cart washer, he told Leon. Mara, reception is not an alternate operations office. Renee brought the sheet here. Then you direct her to customer service. Customer service directed her to voicemail 3 times. His voice stayed pleasant. And now you understand why we need coverage at the front. Leon carried the bag away. Wade waited until he was through the double doors. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I'm answering phones. You're holding side meetings. I identified iron on a sheet. You're cultivating an audience. That surprised a laugh out of me. With Frank D? He lowered his voice. Calvin will be here at 3. Put the clean signature copy in Conference A. I don't have a clean signature copy. It was in the packet. It still contains the minimum volume language. We discussed this. You spoke. I disagreed. That's not the same as resolving it. You no longer have approval authority. Then why would I prepare a signature copy? For a second, his face lost its practiced calm. What showed underneath wasn't rage, it was fatigue. We need this renewal, he said. The bank wants committed supply pricing before they finalize the expansion facility. Russ gave us 8% on base textile cost, which is the number the bank is looking at. The fuel table takes back 5. The rejected goods credit takes back another 2 if quality holds where it is. The minimums create the rest of the risk. Our volume is growing. Our forecast is growing. Those are different sentences. He rested both hands on the counter. Do you want this company to stay small forever? There it was, the credible question inside all the bad ones. Wade had spent years watching Mercer turn away business because the old wash tunnel was full. The proposed second facility would give us redundancy, better water recovery, and access to 2 counties we currently served at a loss. He could see the company we might become. He just kept trying to invoice the future early. I want the contract to survive the first slow quarter, I said, and I want employees who understand timing. Celia's office door opened behind him. She came out holding a payroll folder against her chest. Wade straightened. 3 o'clock, Conference A. After he left, Celia approached the desk. You could make one day easy, she said. I didn't buy the bell. Her lips almost moved. Then she saw the renewal. He said you were done with that. He demoted me. He didn't make the numbers stop. She glanced down the hall before leaning closer. The financing matters, Mara. So do the minimums. You always do this. Read. Make the most frightening version of something sound like the only honest one. The words landed because they were practiced. Celia had used a softer version of them after our mother's surgery, after the sale of her house, after Wade borrowed money and repaid it 2 months late. I was the sister who checked the dosage, read the closing statement, and saved the text message. Celia was the sister who made holidays possible afterward. What did he tell you? I asked. That you refused to finish the review. I finished it. He didn't like the answer. He said you embarrassed him in front of Calvin. Calvin wasn't there. On the call Friday, I asked what utilization figure supported the minimum. You asked it 4 times. Because Wade answered 3 different questions. Celia tightened her grip on the folder. He has a lot riding on this. So does Mercer. I mean personally. I looked at her. A phone rang inside payroll. She turned toward it too quickly. What does personally mean? I have to get that. Celia. But she was already walking away. At 3:17, Calvin Russ came through the front door carrying a leather portfolio and a paper cup darkened with coffee around the lid. I knew the exact time because I had just written it beside Frank B's name, then crossed out Frank B and written Calvin beneath him in red. Calvin looked at my nameplate, then he looked at me. "Well," he said, "that seems like a poor use of furniture." Wade came down the hall before I could answer. "Calvin, good to see you." Calvin set his cup beside the visitor ledger. A drop of coffee landed on the open renewal near the clause I had circled. He reached to lift the page away from it. Then he stopped. The clause was from our existing agreement, attached to my notes for comparison. It required quarterly reconciliation of purchase forecasts against documented route usage before either party could enforce volume penalties. I had negotiated it 2 years earlier after a resort opening was delayed and left us with $40,000 in sheets we could not put into service. Rusk had wanted the penalty. I had shown Calvin that his own warehouse had missed 2 delivery windows, making our launch date impossible even if the resort had opened on time. The clause had split the loss according to what each company could prove. Calvin read it once. His finger followed the sentence to my initials in the margin. Wade touched his shoulder. "We've got Conference A set up." Calvin looked past him at me. "Who wrote the contract?" "A lot of hands touch these things," Wade said. Calvin tapped the clause. "This language. Who wrote it?" Celia stood behind the glass wall of payroll watching us. I capped my red marker. "I did," I said. Calvin nodded as if I had confirmed a delivery address. Then he turned to Wade. "Why is your contract analyst sitting at reception?" Wade's hand remained on Calvin's shoulder 1 second too long. Mara's role changed this morning. "Before our renewal meeting." "Yes." "Interesting timing." Wade removed his hand. "The agreement is ready." Calvin looked at the red circles covering the pages beside my keyboard. "No," he said, "I don't believe it is." Wade's smile held. "Why don't we discuss the open items in the conference room?" Calvin lifted the top page and read the red circle around the fuel table. "How many open items?" 3, I said. Wade turned his head. "Mara, 3 material ones. There are 9 wording changes." Calvin looked at me. "Are the material ones related?" "They compound." "Meaning?" "The fuel adjustment makes the discount smaller. The rejection credit change makes quality failures more expensive for us. The minimum purchase makes us buy more inventory before we know whether Wade's new routes will support it." Wade's jaw shifted on the word Wade. Calvin picked up his coffee. "Conference A?" "This way," Wade said. Calvin didn't move. "Bring your analyst. She's covering reception." "For whom?" Wade glanced at the empty lobby. The phone rang. All 3 of us looked at it. I answered. "Mercer Linen Service, this is Mara." A route driver asked whether Frank D. was still in Conference B. I checked the visitor ledger, transferred the call, and hung up. Calvin waited. Wade exhaled through his nose. "Mara can join us for the contract portion." "I'd hate to leave the phones defenseless," Calvin said. I gathered the renewal, my comparison copy, and the yellow legal pad where I had converted the minimums into pounds of usable inventory. The brass bell stayed beside the ledger. Celia was still behind the glass. When I passed, she lowered her eyes again, but not before I saw the warning in them. Conference A had 6 gray chairs, a television nobody could connect to on the first try, and framed photographs of delivery trucks we no longer owned. Wade sat at the head of the table. Calvin chose a chair in the middle. I sat across from him. Wade opened a clean signature copy. "As I was saying, the base discount is 8%, locked for 18 months. "Subject to the freight index," I said. He flattened his palm on the page. Calvin took off his reading glasses and polished them with his tie. "Let her finish." "The freight adjustment resets monthly," I said. "The current diesel benchmark puts the effective discount just under 3%. It may improve, but the proposed language has no downward reconciliation if Rusk's consolidated routes reduce its actual freight cost." Calvin put his glasses back on. "We removed the downward reconciliation because Mercer's deliveries will come through the West Hub." "The West Hub is closer. It's also new." "And once it reaches projected utilization?" He gave me a level look. "You want part of our efficiency. You want us to absorb part of your volatility." The corner of his mouth rose. Wade said, "This is exactly the kind of academic back and forth that has delayed the agreement." "It isn't academic," I said. "The February fuel adjustment would have cost us $11,800 against savings of more than $30,000 before rejected goods credits." Calvin opened his portfolio. "Let's take that one next." For 40 minutes, the meeting behaved like a contract meeting. Calvin defended his company, I defended ours. Wade tried to keep us moving toward signature, then changed tactics and started presenting each disputed point as a reasonable concession he had already won. He had won some. Rusk had extended payment terms from 15 days to 30. They had agreed to replace unopened defective stock without requiring laboratory confirmation. Wade had also gotten them to hold emergency inventory at the West Hub, which could save us during holiday restaurant volume. When he explained that, I said, "That part is good." The surprise on his face lasted half a second. Calvin noticed. Wade leaned back. "Thank you. It also makes the minimum harder to justify. You're asking us to commit to buying inventory you can still sell elsewhere." Calvin clicked his pen. Wade's chair creaked. By the time we reached the volume schedule, Calvin had stopped writing. He studied the figures, then looked at Wade. "These forecasts include Fairmont?" "Fairmont and the 2 clinic routes." "Fairmont hasn't given us a delivery window," I said. "They gave us a target. A target isn't an opening." Wade turned to Calvin. "Construction delays are normal. We've accounted for slippage." "Where?" I asked. He pointed to a column labeled Adjusted Ramp. "That reduces the first month by 15% and assumes full volume the second month. Their laundry demand doesn't disappear because a contractor misses a deadline. It doesn't become ours until the contract starts." Calvin closed the signature copy. Wade looked at the folder. "We can attach a clarification." "I need revised forecasts," Calvin said. "You have them. I have forecasts your analyst won't certify. She no longer holds that responsibility." Calvin glanced at my new nameplate, visible through the conference room glass. "That's becoming clear." The meeting ended without signatures. Calvin stood and slid his portfolio under his arm. "Send me actual route usage for the last 4 quarters, the signed pipeline accounts, and a revised minimum schedule. We'll reconvene Thursday." "Thursday works," Wade said. "I'll bring our finance director. I'll have our team ready." Calvin looked at me. "Will you be part of that team?" Before I could answer, Wade said, "I'll decide who attends." Calvin nodded once, then decide carefully. At the reception counter, he picked up his coffee and studied the brass bell. "Donna finally escape?" "Friday." Good for her. She once kept me waiting 40 minutes because Wade had entered my appointment under Russell. From the hallway, Wade said, "You two finished?" Calvin pressed the bell. Its sharp little ring carried through the office and into payroll. "Now we are." After the door closed behind him, Wade took the renewal from my hands. "Don't confuse a vendor's performance with authority." "I wasn't performing. That was your problem." He walked toward his office. "What should I tell Calvin if he calls?" I asked. Wade stopped. "To call me." "What should I tell everyone else?" "That you're reception." He left the signature copy on his desk but carried my marked comparison set with him. I still had the photographs. Every time I reviewed a vendor agreement, I photographed my final markup before turning it over. Not because I expected sabotage, because Wade carried papers into meetings, wrote on them, separated schedules from exhibits, and later asked where page 47 had gone. At 5:20, after the last route driver brought in his keys, Celia came out of payroll wearing her coat. "What happened?" she asked. "You heard the bell." I heard Wade shut his door. "Calvin wants revised forecasts." Her face tightened. "So the meeting failed." "The meeting found work that needs doing." "You knew what today was supposed to be." "A signature?" "Yes. On terms we can't support." She set her purse on the reception counter. "Do you understand that the expansion loan has a deadline?" I understand the bank wants supply pricing. They also want evidence that management can execute. Then management should execute. Mara. The exhaustion in my name sounded older than the argument. I lowered my voice. What does Wade have riding on this personally? She picked at a loose thread on her purse strap. He was promised vice president if the second facility closes. That's his title. It's more than a title. His bonus? Our plans. She said it as though the word should cover everything. What plans? We put a deposit on the River Street condo. I stared at her. Their current house was 12 minutes from the plant. The River Street development was 45 minutes away and had a roof deck overlooking a canal that smelled bad in August. You haven't sold your house. We needed the expansion bonus to carry both until we do. Celia, why would you do that before the loan closed? Her face changed immediately. I had become exactly who she said I was, the person reading the frightening version aloud. Because Wade has worked toward this for 4 years. I'm not questioning the work. You always say that right before you reduce somebody's life to a bad calculation. She picked up her purse. I'm trying to understand why you need me to sign a bad contract. I need you to stop treating caution like the only form of intelligence. She walked out before I found an answer that wasn't another calculation. The next morning, my password opened email and nothing else. The contract drive rejected me. The cost database rejected me. The customer service platform displayed a white box that said, "Access role not assigned." At 8:14, Wade sent a company-wide message announcing that contract review responsibilities had transitioned to department leadership. The final paragraph said questions about the transition should be directed to him to prevent confusion arising from outdated analysis. Nina appeared at reception holding an empty coffee mug. Outdated analysis, she said. I aged overnight. Badly, from the looks of it. Thank you. She set the mug beside the bell. He told accounts payable not to send you invoices. Then don't. He also told me the Rusk savings are 29.4% better than your estimate. That sentence doesn't mean anything. I know, it offended me. A driver came through the front doors carrying a stack of pink delivery slips. Nina picked up her mug and wandered back toward accounting before Wade could see her. The driver was Jesse Cole, supervisor for the Eastern restaurant routes. His hair was wet from the mist outside, and a black streak ran across the front of his safety vest. Donna here. Retired. He looked toward the ceiling. They're dropping one by one. What do you need? He put a Rusk invoice on the counter. Wade says this MAT surcharge belongs in the vendor loss report. I can't find the rate. I looked at the invoice. The charge was labeled Dedicated Transfer, East. This isn't a MAT surcharge. It's on a MAT shipment. It's a transfer charge. Why did the inventory come through Easton? Rusk moved it after we added the Marlowe restaurants. How many Marlowe locations are active? 3. The forecast showed 8. They're remodeling the other 5. When do they open? Jesse rubbed the black streak on his vest and made it worse. They stopped giving dates. I turned the invoice over. Rusk's freight code was printed in the lower corner. When Wade added all 8 locations to the route plan, Rusk staged the mats at Easton. We didn't draw them down, so they transferred the excess back west. That's what this charge is. So it's ours. It came from our forecast. Wade told me Rusk changed the delivery point. They did. After we changed the volume, Jesse stared at the invoice. That's going in my report at noon. Then put the sequence in it. He's going to love that. He asked for accurate vendor losses. Jesse snorted. He asked for losses with Rusk's name on them. He took the invoice and left. At 11:58, Wade entered the conference room with the department leads. Through the glass, I watched Jesse hand out his route report. Wade read the first page, flipped to the second, and looked directly at me. Jesse kept talking. It was a small thing, one charge, one honest sentence in a report Wade expected to use against Calvin. Wade closed the conference room blinds. At 2, Celia brought me a document titled Reassignment Acknowledgement. HR needs your signature. We don't have HR. Payroll needs it. I read the first paragraph. It said my duties had been temporarily reassigned because I had failed to complete time-sensitive vendor analysis. I'm not signing this. You can note disagreement. The disagreement is the entire sentence. She slid a pen toward me. Then write that. I picked up my red china marker instead and drew a line beneath failed to complete. Celia watched the red wax move across the page. You enjoy this, she said quietly. What? Being the one person who refuses. I capped the marker. You think this is enjoyable? I think it makes you feel necessary. Before I could answer, Wade opened his office door. Nina, he called. She stood inside her cubicle. Bring me every Rusk invoice from the last 3 months. Nina looked at me, then at him. Originals or copies? Originals. That evening, after the office emptied and the plant settled into the steady thunder of second shift, Nina came to reception carrying her tote bag. She placed 3 photocopied invoices beneath the visitor ledger. I made these at lunch, she said. You heard him ask for originals. I gave him originals. I lifted the copies, fuel adjustments, rejection deductions, transfer charges. Nina. He says your numbers are outdated. Let's update them. We worked at Donna's desk with the lobby lights off and the calculator display glowing green between us. We matched invoices to Wade's projected savings, then added the actual fuel index and average rejection rate. The 8% discount fell to 3. When we applied the minimum volume to the accounts that had actually signed, it disappeared. Nina pressed the calculator key again, harder this time. That can't be right. It is. We'd pay more. Only if the routes miss Wade's schedule. Fairmont already missed it. The double doors opened behind us. Wade stood there with my marked contract under one arm. He looked at Nina's copies, the calculator and the red marker in my hand. Then he smiled. There's the audience, he said. Nina didn't move. Wade held out his hand. Copies. They're accounts payable records, she said, and you remove them from accounting. I copied them. During work hours, during lunch, using company equipment? Nina considered that. Would you prefer I reimburse the toner? His smile disappeared. I gathered the pages and held them out. She was verifying your savings estimate. I didn't ask her to. She doesn't need permission to reconcile invoices. She needs permission to conduct contract analysis after I assign that responsibility elsewhere. To whom? Wade looked at Nina. Go home. She picked up her tote but left the calculator on the desk. Nina, he said. She stopped. If any vendor records leave this building, you'll be terminated. Then it's fortunate we're in the building. The double doors swung shut behind her. Wade placed my marked contract on the counter. You took photographs of this. It wasn't a question. I photograph every final markup. You no longer have authorization to retain contract materials. They're on my company phone, which you'll give me tomorrow. The phone had never left my desk. Wade knew that. He was establishing sentences now, laying them down one at a time so he could walk across them later. You want me to delete my work? I asked. I want you to follow instructions. Which instruction did I violate tonight? You continued analyzing a contract after reassignment. Nina asked me to check arithmetic. You pulled Leon into your concerns. You altered Jesse's report. I didn't touch Jesse's report. He changed it after talking to you. He corrected it after talking to me. Wade put both hands on Donna's worn counter. He looked tired again, but the tiredness no longer made him seem open. It made him precise. You're trying to create a record that I ignored warnings. You did ignore warnings. And there it is. There what is. The story you want. The plant rumbled behind him. Somewhere inside, a steel cart hit another cart with a flat boom. What story do you think I want? I asked. That I got promoted because I talk well and you stayed where you were because you tell hard truths. I got demoted because I wouldn't approve your forecast. You got reassigned because you forgot who makes the decision. He picked up the invoice copies. Go home, Mara. My shift ends at 6. It's 6:12. Then I'll see you tomorrow. He watched me put the red marker into my purse. I wouldn't count on that. Celia's car was still in the lot. She sat behind the wheel with the engine running and her face lit blue by her phone. When I walked past, she opened the passenger door. Get in. I have my car. Just get in. The River Street development brochure lay between the seats, its cover showing two people holding wine glasses beside water that had been edited much bluer than the canal. I got in and shut the door. What happened? She asked. You tell me. Wade called you. He said you were going through invoices after hours. With Nina. That makes it better? It makes it accounting. Celia pressed her fingers to her forehead. He thinks you're trying to undermine the renewal. I'm trying to keep Mercer from committing to inventory it can't use. I know what you think you're doing. Do you? He came home Friday and said you made him look dishonest in front of Calvin. He gave Calvin a volume figure that included unsigned accounts. He gave him the growth forecast. He called it committed demand. She looked out the windshield. Mist silvered the glass. He shouldn't have demoted you in the meeting, she said. The sentence was so small I almost missed what it had cost her. No, I said, but you knew how to push him. That doesn't make the demotion reasonable. I didn't say it did. You're saying I caused it correctly. I'm saying you can be right in a way that leaves everyone else bleeding. I looked at the brochure. How much was the deposit? $25,000. Refundable? Her silence answered. Did Wade tell you to sign the contract on the condo? That's not the same. Did you read it? Her head snapped toward me. Don't. You want me to ignore the risk at work because you ignored it at home. I want my sister not to enjoy proving my husband wrong. I don't enjoy it. Then why do you look most alive when somebody says you're the only person who noticed? That hurt because part of it was true. There had been moments, brief, ugly moments when Wade's errors felt like oxygen. 6 years of being introduced as Celia's sister, then Wade's sister-in-law had left me hungry for a fact nobody could wave away as family access. Competence had become the one room I believed I had earned. I like being good at my job, I said, and if Wade admits you're right, I'd still like him to stop punishing people for bringing him numbers. She stared through the mist. He's offering to give your title back. I turned to her. He asked me to talk to you. Of course he did. Don't make that face. He's trying to solve this. What does he want? A revised analysis. One that includes the expansion revenue. It already includes signed expansion revenue, all projected revenue. No. And a memo saying the original delay came from incomplete operating data. Shared responsibility. You, Leon, routes. So Wade gets the contract and everyone else gets a piece of the forecast. He gets financing, the company gets a new plant, you get your office back, and you get your condo. Celia flinched. I opened the door. Mara. I'll respond to him in writing. Please don't write one of your letters. That's what he's counting on. I prepared the response at the reception desk the next morning. I accepted responsibility for incorporating verified operational updates. I declined to certify unsigned accounts as committed volume. I declined to describe the review as incomplete when the disputed assumptions had been identified in writing the previous week. I offered to produce 3 forecast ranges, signed, probable, and proposed, if each was labeled accurately. At the bottom, I wrote, "My title does not change the numbers I can support." I printed 2 copies, signed both, and took one to Wade. He read it without inviting me to sit. This is grandstanding. It's a response. I offered you a path back. You offered me a title in exchange for spreading responsibility. I offered you a chance to stop harming the business. Use the 3 forecasts. The bank doesn't want 3 forecasts. The bank wants one you can defend. His eyes hardened. Leave the company phone. It's at reception. And your office key. You took my office. The key, Mara. I placed it on his desk. He called Celia in after I left. At 3, Calvin arrived with his finance director, a narrow woman named Beth Kessler, who carried a laptop and asked for a power outlet before saying hello. Wade took them into Conference A. Leon, Jesse, and the sales director joined him. I remained at reception. The blinds stayed open this time. Wade displayed a revised chart on the television. I could see the columns, but not the labels. Fairmont appeared in blue. Bishop Rehab appeared in green. 8 Marlowe locations sat in a yellow block that rose neatly through the next 2 quarters. Jesse leaned forward and pointed at something. Wade clicked past the slide. 10 minutes later, Leon came out. "Need something?" I asked. "Air." He stood beside the bell and rolled his shoulders. "What happened?" "He wants me to certify 200,000 clean pounds by month 7. Can the plant do it?" "Once, maybe. If nothing stops and the water authority doesn't cut our discharge window." "Can it do it every week?" He looked through the glass at Wade. "No." "Did you say that?" "I said I'd certify 185 with maintenance windows." "What did he say?" "That the new soil sorter closes the gap." "The sorter isn't the wash tunnel." "I'm aware." Wade opened the conference room door. Leon went back inside. The meeting lasted another hour. When Calvin came out, he stopped at reception. "Did you review the revised forecast?" he asked. "No." Wade was directly behind him. Calvin glanced from him to me. "Was she given the underlying numbers?" "The review was handled by the responsible departments," Wade said. Beth closed her laptop. "Our minimum schedule is based on the forecast you presented today. If plant capacity isn't certified, we can't price the same commitment." "Leon's concerns are maintenance-related," Wade said. Leon stood inside the conference room, close enough to hear. "They're capacity-related," he said. Wade turned slowly. Calvin zipped his portfolio. "Will remain month to month until the forecast is settled. Our current rates expire Friday. Then the month-to-month schedule applies Monday. That costs both of us." "It does." Calvin nodded to me and walked out with Beth. Wade closed Conference A's door so hard the framed photograph beside it tilted. The firing happened at 4:20. Celia brought the letter. A uniformed security supervisor named Don accompanied her, looking miserable because I had approved the contract that put his company on site. Wade stayed in his office. The letter said, "Insubordination, unauthorized access to vendor records, and disruption of time-sensitive negotiations." It said my employment ended immediately. "I didn't access anything unauthorized," I told Celia. She kept her voice formal. "You directed Nina to copy restricted documents." "I didn't direct her." "Nina says she copied them for you. Ask her what else she said." Celia's mouth trembled once. "You can provide a written response." "I already did." Dawn held a white property box. I had very little to collect. A sweater, 2 coffee mugs, a roll of antacids, the photograph from my office wall of the original delivery fleet, given to me after I found a billing error large enough to pay for the truck pictured in the center. At reception, I removed my personal items from the drawers. I left the bell where it was. I left the new nameplate, too. The red china marker lay beside the phone. I picked it up. Celia watched me put it in my purse. "You could have taken the offer," she said. "So could Wade." His wasn't real. Neither was mine. Dawn carried the box through the lobby. 2 route drivers stood near the key cabinet. One looked away. The other gave me a tight nod. Nina came out of accounting. "Don't," I said, because Wade's office door was open. She stopped. I signed myself out of the visitor ledger at 4:34 in red. Outside, the air smelled like rain and exhaust from the idling route trucks. Dawn set the box in my trunk and apologized twice. Before I closed it, the front door opened. Leon came down the sidewalk holding the clear bag with the blue streaked sheet. "Cart washer?" I asked. "Misaligned spray rail. It's documented." "Good." "Wade wants it logged as a textile defect." "Don't." "I'm not going to." Through the lobby glass, Wade watched us. Leon lowered his voice. "He'll use the month-to-month cost against you. He should use it against the forecast. He's telling people Calvin would have signed if you hadn't interfered. Some of them would believe him. Higher supplier rates would touch budgets, repairs, raises, overtime. My clean line on paper would become someone else's smaller paycheck. "Keep your records," I said. Leon held up the bag. "Started with this one?" My phone rang as I got into the car. I let it ring until I saw the name. Nina. "I told you not to do anything in front of Wade." "I didn't. I'm in the restroom." Despite myself, I laughed. Then she said, "He wants me to revise the savings report. Don't use company records outside your job." "I'm not asking about records." "What are you asking?" "If somebody hired you to review them, what would your terms be?" I looked through the windshield at the brass bell behind the glass. "Written scope," I said. "Direct access to source documents. No edits without attribution." "And?" "No family favors." Nina was quiet for a moment. "Good," she said, "because Graham Mercer is asking why his biggest supplier walked out without a contract. Graham Mercer had not called me in 3 years. He sent birthday cards with his assistant's handwriting and showed up at the plant twice a month in a wool coat, too good for the wash floor. He had started Mercer Linen with 2 used washers and a delivery van, then gradually handed daily operations to Wade, his nephew, while he concentrated on major customers and the bank. His message arrived before I left the parking lot. "Mara, please call me before you make any decisions." I called from my kitchen after carrying the white property box inside and leaving it unopened on the table. "Wade says you were fired for mishandling confidential records," Graham said. "Then you should ask him which records." "I'm asking you." Vendor invoices Nina was authorized to review. She made copies inside the building so we could compare them with Wade's savings forecast. After Wade reassigned you. Numbers don't become confidential because they disagree with him. He made a low sound. Graham had 3 versions of that sound. One meant amusement, one meant indigestion, and one meant he had heard something he intended to pretend he hadn't. "What happened with Rusk?" he asked. "Calvin wouldn't price his minimums against a forecast the plant manager wouldn't certify. Wade says Leon got nervous in the room. Leon gave him a sustainable capacity figure. And you agree with Leon. The equipment agrees with Leon." Graham was quiet. "The bank called me," he said. "They're pausing the facility review until the supply agreement is resolved. Then Wade should resolve it. I want you to come in tomorrow." I was walked out by security today, as a consultant. The word landed differently than he expected. "I don't have a consulting agreement." "We'll make one." "We won't make it tomorrow morning in the parking lot." "Mara, we're paying month-to-month rates starting Monday. That's an expensive reason to read carefully." He gave me the indigestion sound. I pulled a yellow pad from the kitchen drawer. "Written scope," I said. "I report to you, not Wade. Direct access to invoices, route usage, signed customer agreements, plant capacity reports, and vendor correspondence. I produce findings and propose terms. I do not certify management forecasts or sign for Mercer." "What rate?" I told him. He stopped making sounds. "That's more than we paid you." "It includes my own taxes, insurance, and the inconvenience of being escorted past my coworkers. You always were sharp on the add-ons. I learned from Rusk." He laughed then, reluctantly. "I'll have something drafted. Send it before noon, I'll review it. We need you now." "You needed me Monday." I set the phone down before my hand started shaking. The first draft gave Wade final approval over my work. I struck that sentence in red. The second limited my access to documents selected by management. I struck that one too. Graham called. "Do you have to make the edits look like wounds?" "It's a China marker. It looks hostile. It's red." He accepted the 3rd version. I returned Friday wearing the same black trousers I had been fired in because they were clean and because some part of me wanted the day to recognize me. My reception nameplate was still on the counter. The brass bell sat beside it. Wade stood near the key cabinet, speaking to Graham. He stopped when I entered. "You've got to be kidding," he said. Graham adjusted the knot of his tie. "She's here for the contract review. She was terminated for insubordination. She's not your employee. That's convenient." "It's precise," I said. He looked at the leather folder in my hand. If any of our information goes to a competitor, my confidentiality terms are stricter than the employee handbook you fired me under. Graham held up one palm. We have 9 days before the bank's credit committee meets. Can we spend them on something useful? Wade walked away. As he passed the reception desk, he hit the bell with the side of his fist. It rang once. I worked in the small training room between the route office and the vending machines. Nina brought invoice reports through the door, then returned to accounting without lingering. Jesse sent actual route starts and customer volumes. Leon gave me machine capacities with maintenance intervals, water restrictions, and historical downtime included. They had all learned to document the ordinary things Wade preferred to call temporary. Fairmont's opening had moved again. Bishop Rehab had signed, but at 60% of the forecasted volume. 3 Marlowe restaurants were operating. The other 5 had suspended remodeling. The plant could reach 200,000 clean pounds during a favorable week. It could not sustain that level without deferring maintenance, and the new cart washer had already lost 6 hours to the misaligned spray rail. The blue-streaked sheet became useful in a way Renee Alvarez would never know. Leon's incident report established that new equipment could pass commissioning and still reduce usable output. Jesse's corrected MAT report established that forecast volume had already generated real transfer costs before the customers opened. Nina's invoices established that fuel and rejection terms consumed most of the advertised discount. And my photographs established that Wade had seen every concern before he moved me to reception. I did not write that he lied. I put dates beside figures and let the sequence speak. Wade adapted to the numbers by changing the argument. He stopped claiming the forecast was certain and began calling it strategic. He told Graham that conservative purchasing would leave Mercer unable to serve new customers. He produced a map showing how Rusk's West Hub could support the second facility. He persuaded the sales director to estimate the revenue Mercer might lose if inventory arrived late. Some of it was good work. That was what made him exhausting. He could find the strongest point in a weak position and make everyone feel irresponsible for noticing the rest. He came into the training room on my 4th day and shut the door. I saw your ranges. Graham sent them to you. Signed, probable, proposed. He placed the pages on the table. You put Fairmont under proposed. They haven't opened. The contract is signed. The service start is contingent on construction. You know they're going to open. I don't know when. If we negotiate against the signed range, Rusk won't reserve enough stock. Then reserve the stock separately from the minimum purchase. They'll charge us. Yes. He pulled out a chair but didn't sit. You always find a price for confidence. Confidence usually has one. Do you understand what happens if the bank cuts the loan? We renovate the existing plant in pieces. We lose the northern routes. 5 years of work turns into replacement boilers and another patched roof. I understand. You don't sound sorry. I'm sorry you made the financing depend on a forecast the people running the plant couldn't support. His nostrils flared. Then he surprised me. I shouldn't have done it in the meeting, he said. The room seemed to shift around the sentence. No, I said. I was angry. I know. You challenged me in front of Calvin. I asked for support behind a number. You knew how it looked. To whom? To someone whose respect matters in this industry. There it was, smaller and more human than ambition. Calvin had built Rusk's West Hub, survived a brutal merger, and earned the kind of authority Wade wanted people to hear before he spoke. My question had exposed him in front of a man he admired. So you put me at reception in front of 14 people, I said. I wanted the argument over. You wanted me smaller. He finally sat. If I recommend that Graham restore your title, will you support the probable range as the minimum? No. You didn't even think. I've thought about it for 9 days. His face closed. You'd let the facility die for this. The facility can be phased. The inventory commitment can be tiered. The fuel index can reconcile both directions. Calvin won't give you all three. Then we negotiate. You like that word now that somebody's paying you by the hour? He left the forecasts on the table. The next morning, he sent Graham an alternative proposal that used my three ranges but assigned purchasing commitments to each stage only when documented triggers occurred. It was workable. He also added emergency inventory at the West Hub, preserving the best piece of his original deal. I marked 2 changes and recommended it as a starting position. Giving him credit felt like swallowing a coin. I did it anyway. Calvin arrived with Beth on the 9th day. The bank sent Raymond Cho, the commercial lending officer who had reviewed the expansion. Graham brought the 2 other Mercer owners, along with Leon, Jesse, Nina, Wade, and the sales director. Conference A could not hold everyone comfortably, so Graham had the folding table brought into the lobby. Donna's old counter became the document station. My reception nameplate had been removed, leaving a clean rectangle in the dust. Wade presented first. He described a phased facility plan with the polish that had once made me proud to work beside him. He acknowledged construction uncertainty. He used Leon's sustainable capacity figure. He proposed that Rusk reserve inventory in bands, with Mercer's minimum increasing only when customer start dates and route usage could be documented. Calvin asked hard questions. Wade answered most of them well. Then Beth opened the proposed renewal. The trigger language still leaves a dispute, she said. If Mercer forecasts a start and we position stock, who absorbs transfer cost when the customer delays? Wade pointed to the chart. The probable range accounts for normal slippage. Normal according to whom? Our historical openings. Jesse shifted in his chair. Calvin walked to the reception counter and laid the original contract beside the new draft. I already have language for this, he said. He opened to the quarterly reconciliation clause, the one with my initials in the margin. Wade said, that applies after purchases begin. It establishes the principle, Calvin replied. Both parties document what actually happened. Mercer pays for inventory positioned against verified customer commitments. Rusk absorbs part of the transfer when our own delivery timing contributes to the miss. Beth read the clause. Raymond leaned closer. Who developed the reconciliation method? Calvin looked across the lobby at me. Mara did. 2 years ago, when each of our companies wanted to send the other one a bill for the same failed opening. He tapped the page. This clause kept $40,000 in sheets from becoming a lawsuit. It also gave us the usage record we needed to move inventory to another customer. That record is why I'm willing to structure this renewal instead of simply raising Mercer's month-to-month price and selling the stock elsewhere. His voice carried through the glass wall of payroll and down the executive hall. Wade stood at the head of the folding table with his expansion map behind him. Calvin continued, I can negotiate with authority. I can't negotiate with numbers that change according to who's in the room. The person who wrote this clause understood the difference. For 1 second, the only sound was the plant entering extraction. The visitor pens trembled in their cup. Graham asked me, can the old clause support the new triggers? With 2 changes. Verification has to happen before Rusk positions dedicated stock, and the fuel adjustment has to reconcile downward as well as upward. Beth looked at Calvin. He sighed. I knew she'd come back to the fuel. You put it in Schedule F. I was hoping reception had softened you. It ruined me. Nina covered a laugh with a cough. Calvin picked up my red marker from the counter and held it out. Show me the changes. We worked for another 3 hours. Mercer did not get the full 8% savings Wade had promised. Rusk did not get a guaranteed minimum based on unsigned growth. The final structure tied volume bands to signed starts and documented usage. Emergency stock carried a reservation fee lower than the cost of forced purchases. Fuel moved in both directions. Rejection credits depended on whether the defect came from supplied goods, Mercer's equipment, or handling. The bank reduced the first phase of the loan. The second facility became a renovation and staged expansion instead of Wade's clean leap north. Graham removed vendor contracts from Wade's authority and assigned them to a finance and operations review shared by Nina and Leon. Wade kept his job because he still knew how to build routes, negotiate equipment, and get a room to move. He lost the vice president title and had to present monthly forecasts beside the people he had tried to overrule. I finished my consulting term and declined Graham's offer to return. The higher month-to-month rates consumed most of the quarter's discretionary budget. Repairs were delayed. Raises moved to the next review cycle. 2 drivers told me I should have signed and fixed it later. Celia said nothing for 11 weeks. Then she met me in the Mercer lobby while I was dropping off my final archive. The River Street brochure was gone from her purse. "We backed out," she said. "Lost the deposit." "I'm sorry." "Wade says you aren't." Wade says a lot of things near whiteboards. Her mouth pulled sideways. She looked at the empty place where my reception nameplate had been. "I thought silence was cheaper," she said. "I knew what he was doing in that meeting. I just thought if I looked down, it would stay between you and him." It didn't. "No." She rubbed the worn crescent in the counter. "I can't fix what I did. You can stop asking me to call it protection." She nodded. It was not forgiveness, but it was the first honest thing we had built in months. Nina referred my first outside client before my Mercer contract ended, a restaurant group with 12 locations and 3 different towel pricing schedules. By the time Calvin visited my new office, I had a desk, a second-hand filing cabinet, and a window overlooking the back of a plumbing supply warehouse. The brass reception bell sat beside my phone. Leon had mailed it after Wade cleared the old nameplates from storage. Calvin tapped it once and slid Mercer's finalized renewal across my desk. I picked up the red China marker and circled one final clause. "Who has to live with this number after we sign?"